All right, I've got a lot of 49ers news this morning, including the fact that Jauan Jennings is going to be back out at practice later on this Thursday. That courtesy of John Lynch. There was a special interview on KMBR this morning where Tony Dungy, the former Tampa Bay coach, former coach of John Lynch, Red 47 there on the left side, Tony Dungy crashed the interview. And Tony Dungy actually had a cool prediction about the game on Sunday in Tampa. He said that these two teams, the 49ers and the Bucks, are going to meet in the playoffs, and the winner of this game on Sunday is going to host that playoff showdown. So the stakes are set when Tony Dungy speaks. We listen. When John Lynch speaks, we listen. And guess what? John Lynch said that he's already had good conversations. I'm going to quote John Lynch on that good conversations part regarding a potential trade for a 49ers pass rusher. Maybe he's had good conversations regarding potential trades in the plural for pass rushers because the 49ers definitely have a lack of available bodies along the defensive front. So, I wrote about this on the San Francisco Standard. There's a big breakdown of the 49ers defense up. I've got the article in the description. I'm going to put it and pin it at the top of the comment section, the chat section here. You could see that the 49ers are renovating this defense with Robert Saleh, and they've already made quite a bit of progress. This is a look through the years. I'm going to make these charts bigger here in a little bit for you. But red is bad, blue is good. This is the defensive line. There's a lot left on the table right now for the defensive line. A lot of meat on the bone. And the 49ers might attack this via a veteran acquisition. Now, trades are not easy to make. You got to find the right compensation. You have to make something make sense for the short term and the long term. And that's why San Francisco is going to be having discussions here over the course of the month of October before the trade deadline on November 4th. Look, I go into linebacker performance, cornerback performance, safety performance. As you could see with the linebackers and the corners, the grades are good. Blue is better than red. At safety, the 49ers having some issues, but the good news there is that they might be able to fix some of those issues with the return of Malik Mustafa this week. So let's talk about the trend upwards injury-wise, because Lynch talked about a lot of this on KMBR this morning. Jennings back at practice today. He's dealing with several things. I think the ribs are the most recent, when he took that shot on the two-point conversion attempt against Jacksonville, so he didn't play against the Rams. He's going to be a limited participant, but I think that puts Jauan Jennings on track to play Sunday against Tampa. And remember, Jauan was huge in that game against the Bucks last year. Game-winning drive for the 49ers to set up the field goal to win it was Jauan Jennings making a big catch and run that down that far sideline that put the 49ers firmly into position. It was all part of the season that should have ended in 1,000 receiving yards before that unfair ejection against Arizona in Week 18. But Jennings trending toward playing. They have not yet given up hope on Ricky Pearsall this week, but he's not going to be at practice today. So Ricky might be able to get out there Friday. He's dealing with the knee issue. He slammed his knee into the turf, trying to make that toe tap catch against Jacksonville. So the 49ers lost both Pearsall and Jennings due to that game. For the Rams game, they still found a way to win, but they definitely want to start making this receiver room more robust. The good news is that Kendrick Bourne is playing really good football, bounced back from the 3-drop game against Jacksonville, and Demarcus Robinson is finding his way back into the mix for the 49ers. He also had a good game against the Rams. But Ricky Pearsall right now is looking to me, and I know there's no doubtful designation. Well, there is a doubtful designation, but they rarely use it. There's no probable designation now. I would say, though, that Ricky Pearsall is doubtful. That's just me prognosticating moving forward for this game on Sunday. However, it does seem that there's a much better chance that Ricky Pearsall plays the following week, Week 7, against the Atlanta Falcons. And you know what? That also happens to be the week that we'll see George Kittle likely return for the 49ers. John Lynch said that there's a good chance that George Kittle is going to be back for 49ers Falcons. He said that he got his hamstring good in Week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. And There was hope that George might be back for this game against Tampa Bay. That's on Sunday, but that ship seems to have sailed. We haven't seen George back at practice. He was working off on the side on Monday, but Kyle Shanahan did say that this week would be a long shot for George, and it looks like the 49ers are aiming everything at that Atlanta game. And just reading the writing on the wall, George Kittle and Ricky Pearsall can both be back for that football game. So the 49ers, of course, you've got to hope that things stay static with the guys who are healthy. You don't want to be getting guys back and then losing other guys. But in general, this offense is showing the signs of healing up than it needs to show. And the defense, too. Malik Mustafa back at practice. I talked about this yesterday at the stadium. I'm going to be back out there today. The 49ers got an unexpected dose of good news, at least to the outside world, when Kevin Givens was back at practice. He tore his pectoral muscle in training camp and has been on injured reserve. Givens could be activated to play this week to help the 49ers with their dearth of defensive tackles, and Malik Mustafa almost certainly will be activated to help the 49ers at safety. And that's why we can transition into talking about this 49ers defense and this deep analysis that I made of Robert Saleh's unit and this renovation. So Givens and Mustafa on track to be back for the defense. Jauan Jennings on track to be back for the offense. Ricky Pearsall making progress. George Kittle making progress. Probably not until next week. We'll see those two guys back. But still, the totality here that I've listed, that's 4 starters for the 49ers coming back at some point in week 6 or in week 7. Brock Purdy, by the way, John Lynch said what we've been saying. He had a really good quote about Brock and the fact that the 49ers have this luxury right now with Mac Jones playing well. And Mac, he's been on the injury report now with both a knee and an oblique injury. Rest assured, Mac is on track to be ready for Sunday. I made that report yesterday from practice. He was throwing the football. He's throwing fine. They might have prevented him from throwing on Monday during that very brief open practice or the open window of practice. Maybe he didn't throw it all on Monday, but that was just an extra practice for the 49ers. He was out there whipping the ball around on Wednesday. I expect the same today. I expect the same tomorrow. And then the 49ers will fly to Tampa. Brock Purdy is not going to play this week. I think that's obvious because they're giving him as much runway as possible to get the 100%. The game against the Rams, and I should say the victory against the Rams, I think was a calculus changer for the 49ers. It bought them a tremendous amount of insurance. At 4-1, they've got the best record in the NFL. They have the luxury, especially since their backup quarterback is getting the job done in Mac Jones, they have the luxury to allow Brock Purdy to heal to 100%. These toe injuries can be very, very tricky. Remember that Purdy wasn't fully healthy, and we knew that when he came back against Jacksonville, but we also knew that Mac Jones was more injured than Brock. Jones obviously overtook Brock in terms of health because Purdy's toe got worse over the course of that game against Jacksonville. So then Mac was ready to go on Thursday night. And now I think it's fair to say that even if Purdy's a little bit healthier than Mac Jones, if he's not at 100%, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to rush him out there, given the 4-1 record, given how well Mac Jones has been filling in his place. The exact quote from John Lynch is, Brock wants to get back at full strength, and Mac allows for that because he's winning games while Brock is getting healthy. This is why it's so valuable to have 2 competent quarterbacks. You don't have to rush Brock. And then I start to wonder, okay, when do they want Purdy back? Like, when is the target date? I understand that these toe injuries are tricky. If 100% is now the goal, and if you continue to have that luxury, if Mac Jones stays healthy enough to give you that luxury, how do you make this play out if you're the 49ers? Well, Atlanta is next, and that game is going to be played in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, Santa Clara, San Francisco. Not really the same thing, but still natural grass at Levi's Stadium, lower injury rate. You prefer Purdy, I think, to return on natural grass. After that, though, there are 2 artificial surface games. The 49ers are going to Houston. That is turf. The 49ers are going to MetLife Stadium, a.k.a. Met Death Stadium in New Jersey. That is also artificial turf. There have been a lot of injury problems, especially at that New York Giants stadium, MetLife Stadium, where the 49ers, that was a house of horrors for them back in the 2020 season. That's where Bosa tore his ACL and Solomon Thomas tore his ACL. I believe those were back-to-back plays. A lot of injuries. I think that was also a Jimmy Garoppolo high ankle sprain while the 49ers were playing the Jets. Anyway, that's the next 4 games for the 49ers. So if Purdy is not back in time for the Falcons game, if he's not at 100% yet, and the return is slated to happen either 3 games from now or 4 games from now, it could happen on artificial turf. Who knows? Maybe the 49ers will want to avoid that. However, they yesterday at least said that there is no discussion of injured reserve for Brock Purdy. Here's how I think that this plays out moving forward. I really do think that the 49ers will ride this line of luxury as far as allowing Brock Purdy to get to 100% as long as they can. Now, situations can change very quickly in the NFL. Mac Jones can get hurt. He already is hurt, and he's already playing through stuff. But he could reach a point where he's no longer your best option to send out there. And Brock Purdy, even at less than 100%, might be something that the 49ers have to think about. But if you put Purdy on injured reserve, you do open up a roster spot, but it is also a minimum of 4 games. And then you would also take away the potential flexibility of having Purdy as a backup in some of these games. Say that he's 90% for the game against the Houston Texans. If he's on IR, you can't go to Brock Purdy in case Mac Jones gets hurt. And the 49ers quarterbacks right now are throwing over 40 times a game. I mean, the 49ers quarterbacks are open to more abuse than any other QBs in the league because they're throwing at the highest rate in the league and pass rushers are getting after them. So I think you need to maintain as much flexibility as possible in that quarterback room. And if you've got 2 guys who are physically capable of playing, which I think should be the case as this month progresses because Purdy is progressing well, then it would really defeat the purpose of that depth to have one of them on injured reserve while unable to play, while the other one is taking all the brunt of the hits and then doesn't have a solid backup option. So I think that where the 49ers are right now, they could theoretically slow play Purdy for an entire month because they have that luxury, but they do not want to take away the option of having Purdy enter the game as a backup, not this week, but maybe in subsequent weeks, maybe for Houston, maybe for New York. They don't want to take that option away because so far the option power at the quarterback position has proven so valuable for them in this 4-1 start. It's a really good situation to be in if you're the 49ers, right? It could have been, okay, Brock Purdy's got a toe injury and Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs are the backups. And you saw what happened last year. The 49ers didn't win a single game when Brock Purdy was not in the huddle and under center. Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs just went out there and lost the 2 times that Brock Purdy was out. So this time, the 49ers have had Mac Jones out there 3 times. All 3 of those games have been wins. It is a huge, huge blessing for this football team, and I'm sure that they're going to try to maximize it moving forward because ultimately you need to get Brock Purdy to 100% because he is the key to an elite offense. Right? Mac Jones will lead a good offense. Brock Purdy with his mobility can lead an elite offense. And right now we're going to start talking about the 49ers defense in the article up on the San Francisco Standard with Robert Saleh and his renovation. And, you know, I've got a lot of cool graphics in this one. We're going to get these up on the screen that really help illustrate where the 49ers are as an entire unit. Here we go. So this is the 49ers defense through the years. These are expected points added EPA ranks of the defense through the years. Blue is a higher rank. Red is a lower rank. As you could see, the defense, especially the run defense, really started to languish in 2023 and 2024. What was once a top 5 run defense devolved into number 26 under Steve Wilkes in 2023 and number 29 under Nick Sorensen in 2024. The 49ers absolutely had to stop the bleeding against the run. That was priority number 1. That was why they hired Robert Saleh. That's why they went through a big-time defensive renovation this offseason. They let some good pass rushing veterans go who are weaker against the run. That's why they went to a youth infusion. I mean, so much of defending the run is just about hunger, just about that desire, just about that little bit of extra hustle. It is tough, really, really tough to find defensive linemen who are on second and third contracts who are still as fiery when it comes to things like run defense as guys on rookie contracts who are obviously very, very incentivized to be playing with reckless abandon. So the 49ers needed a little bit more of that reckless abandon up front. I think that they've gotten it. You know, what's crazy is that the 49ers are one of the top 3 defenses in football across multiple advanced metrics when it comes to short yardage run defense. And obviously that is reflected in the EPA rank. They're now ranked number 8 in run defense, up from number 29 last year. Now, the pass defense, it still struggled. I think that that's something to be expected given the fact that the pass rush has taken such a hit with Nick Bosa being gone. But everything right here in the terms of the total rank, you could see is moving in the right direction. They are in the top half of defensive rankings. Now they've got to find a way to take this to the next level and also make what they've got so far sustainable, because I would say that the game against the Rams, well, I don't want to call it a fluke, but the 49ers did defy the odds against the Rams. So you need a little bit more of a stable pass rush to make sure that you're still delivering defensively. You can't always count on a punch out at the 1 yard line and then a 4th down stop for a loss of yardage for the Rams. After 14 carries, that game didn't come close to a loss for the Rams. The Rams had gained at least 2 or 3 yards on every single one of their rushes in that game. They averaged 5 yards a carry up until the 49ers stonewalled them on that 4th down. So it was an unbelievably clutch performance by the 49ers, but there was still the fact that the Rams moved the ball with a lot of explosiveness in that game. I mean, Alfred Collins might have punched the ball out at the 1 yard line, but the Rams still had to move it down the entire field to get it to the 1 with a chance to take the lead late in that game. So we have to laud the 49ers for being as clutch as they have been over the course of this young season, especially the youngsters. You don't normally see these types of high leverage plays from young players, but we also have to point out the fact that you can't expect it on a game in and game out basis. You also can't expect the officials to cooperate on a game in and game out basis. For example, against Jacksonville, Upton Stout delivered the big interception. That was another clutch play from a rookie player, but the officials called him for what I think was a bad penalty, and it wiped it away, and the 49ers ended up losing the game. They probably win the game if the officials cooperated, but they didn't. The point is, if you're playing with tiny margins, sometimes you're going to end up on the wrong side of them, which is why you have to increase the size of the margin, which is why John Lynch is interested in trading for a pass rusher, as should be no surprise to anyone, right? Let's take a look at the defensive line metrics for the 49ers that I put into the article. Remember I said that blue is good and red is bad? Defensive tackles are at the bottom. Defensive ends are above the dividing horizontal line. There's a lot of red and there's a lot of dark red. Now, these are percentile scores. So, for example, pass rush productivity that tallies sacks, quarterback hits, and pressures. It's a nice formula from PFF. Nick Bosa's score is the 75th percentile, which means that he ranks better than 75% of edge rushers in pass rush productivity. It means he's well above average. Run grade, that is the PFF run grade, Bosa was better than 60% of edge rushers in run grade. Obviously, Bosa's not going to be able to see this season through. He's torn his ACL, but we can still learn a lot from this, including the fact that we see a ton of dark red, which isn't good. The 49ers have had a lot of their young players not yet statistically produce the way that they're going to need them to statistically produce. And I would say they expect them to. You got to give these guys time to develop. But in the near term right now, you've got guys like CJ West, Alfred Collins. Like Collins a little bit better in his run defense grade. I think that fumble really helped, but they haven't really produced in the run in the pass rush game. You've got guys like Michael Williams, who I think has been very, very disruptive in the way that the 49ers have asked him to be disruptive. I think that he's been a good edge-setting presence. I think he's pushed the pocket, but he's yet to register on the stat sheet in a big way. And it's left Bryce Huff and Yetur Gross-Matos over the past couple games as being the 49ers' primary pressure producers. Well, problem now is that Yetur Gross-Matos has gone down with a hamstring injury. So you take away his 89th percentile pass rush productivity score, and you're entirely in the red at defensive tackle. Entirely in the red. You take away Nick Bosa at the top, and outside of Bryce Huff, you are entirely in the red across the entire defensive line. That is how thin things are right now for the 49ers. Now, I get it. Michael Williams is doing stuff that's happening outside the stat sheet, and we watch tape and we fully recognize that. I think Sam Okawanu has done good stuff outside the stat sheet. Of course, Alfred Collins punched that football out. That was also on the stat sheet. So I get it. There is moldable clay. There's potential here, but before I even go further, I should say that Alfred Collins missed practice on Wednesday with a knee sprain. So we've got to see what his status moving forward is going to be. The bottom line is that you look at what the 49ers have right now, and the fact that they're 4-1 is insane. The fact that they've been able to overcome the youth and the shorthandedness, all the injuries that they've had to be where they're at right now record-wise is certifiably wild. But they've got to add to this group. I think there's a recognition from inside of the 49ers building that they've got to add to this group. The good news for the 49ers is that Kevin Givens is going to be back, so he's going to be in the bottom half of this, and I think Givens can give you at least a 50th percentile score. Middle of the pack, which obviously would be an improvement over what the 49ers are dealing with so far. So Givens back for San Francisco. Kalia Davis is going to be playing with a club, but that is very, very difficult. Ian Williams, former 49ers defensive tackle, chimed in here on Twitter. Somebody was asking what it's like to play defensive line with a club. He said it's a huge disadvantage. Kalia better be good working with one arm because it's hard to post and fight back on pressure when you can't grab and feel. And Kalia so far had not generated a whole lot on the stat sheet for the 49ers. So I think it's no surprise that John Lynch was so open talking about scouring the trade market for pass rushers. He said, I'm having a lot of good and productive conversations. If everything aligns, we'll see. Kyle Shanahan said what Kyle Shanahan usually does yesterday. It said that it's hard to find a trade partner and a trade target that works. And I agree. I mean, especially in the NFL, like basketball, historically, baseball had seen way more trades than football. But for the NFL, you got to find a very specific window of match, right? The money has to work out. And sometimes if the money doesn't work out, maybe you can find a way to pick up some of a player's salary or have the original team pick up some of his salary in a creative cost split, right? So with the 49ers this offseason, when they traded for Bryce Huff, they weren't willing to pay all $17 million, but they told Philadelphia, hey, if you guys pay like $9 million, we'll pay the remaining $8 million, and we've got a deal. Every situation is different, but those are all complicating factors that go into this stuff. I also have to point out that you have to have teams in firm selling mode to make a trade feasible. And very clearly, the Cincinnati Bengals, who have Trey Hendrickson and Miles Murphy, two potential targets for the 49ers, are not yet in selling mode, even though I would argue that they should be. But they're going to hold on to one last gasp of hope here for at least the next couple of weeks. They just traded for Joe Flacco to try to improve the quarterback situation with Joe Burrow hurt. However, they play the Packers, and then they play the division-leading Pittsburgh Steelers. And if the Bengals lose the next couple games, then all of a sudden I think you might have a situation where they're much more willing to sell. The Tennessee Titans, they just beat the Cardinals. They got really lucky in beating the Cardinals. They've got Jeffrey Simmons. And, you know, I just go back to the 49ers defensive line chart. You can't argue that Jeffrey Simmons wouldn't be a nice boost to a room that's lost any semblance of blue on the bottom half here because Yetur Gross-Matos is currently hurt. They need help at a lot of places, the 49ers do. Now, you might ask, okay, so how are they winning? How is the defense for the 49ers ranked at number 8 or 8 overall against the run and number 14 total with a defensive line that is leaking so much oil, that is obviously still going through the growing pains that we talked about before the season? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because there are other metrics that are fascinating, starting with the linebacker position. Fred Warner is the top graded player in all of football. D. Winters is interesting. I know that he had been on the injury report with a shoulder injury over the course of the past couple weeks. He's off of the injury report now. His play, though, has not been as good over the past 3 weeks. He's missed some tackles, but more than anything, he has struggled in pass coverage. The Rams targeted D. Winters 11 times, and he gave up 9 catches. He was not as good in coverage, so I don't know if the shoulder was still affecting him against the Rams last week, but he was graded up in the 80s after the first 2 games, and he's now dropped. It's still a little bit above average. There's not great linebacker play around the league, but he's down at 62.9. Luke Gifford not playing nearly as much. He's yet to actually miss a tackle, Luke Gifford. That's why you could see the good stats here. He's in on base defense. He's a great linebacker 3 for the 49ers. He grades out at a 75.5 on the PFF scale. But how good this 49ers linebacker room ends up being will be dependent on D. Winters and the consistency that he can show. And again, I'm not sure if this has been health related, but he hadn't been as good over the past 3 games. So we're going to sit back and see. But Fred Warner is the consistent variable here. You know that you're going to get top level play from Fred Warner. That's a future Hall of Famer. The question is, what do the 49ers get from the weak side linebacker next to him in D. Winters? All right, here's the safety performance for the 49ers. Now, there's some red here. This is rating allowed into coverage. Marquise Siegel has given up a ton in the pass game. Now, Jason Pinnock, the rating that he's allowed has obviously not been good, but look here at yards per cover snap. Pinnock has given up only 0.17 yards per cover snap. So over 325 total snaps, and then the snaps in pass coverage, there hadn't been a big allowance. He has, though, given up a couple touchdown passes, and that's what's made the rating worse. Marquise Siegel, 1.44 yards per cover snap is the highest amount allowed by any safety in the NFL. He's given up 282 passing yards. 138 of those came against the Rams. So Marquise Siegel, I think, has been playing well against the run. I credit him for being in on that stop, but one of the many 49ers being in on that stop, 4th down against the Rams. But it is undeniable that he has been victimized in the pass game by opposing quarterbacks. And I think part of the issue is obviously inexperience. Another part of the issue might be that he's 5'11". He's a little shorter than your some of the lengthier safeties that we've seen around the NFL. And with tight ends proliferating across the league in terms of their receiving ability, we've seen bigger, the 6'4", 6'5" tight ends picking on Marquise Siegel in the pass game. Anyway, the 49ers are getting Malik Mustafa back this week. And I think that Malik it's very clear that he's going to take the Marquise Siegel role. Now, I wouldn't really advocate for the 49ers just straight out benching Marquise Siegel. I do think he's been a missile against the run. I do think that he's got a good future at safety for the 49ers because of the speed that he brings to the table. So what you probably will see is Marquise Siegel moving into the third safety spot that Jair Brown is in. And I think the 49ers, instead of running a big nickel, are maybe they add another personnel package. Maybe Jair Brown keeps some of his snaps, but maybe you have a true 3 safety set for San Francisco with Marquise Siegel flexing down a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, ready to be that missile against the run, ready to be a blitzer for the 49ers. Obviously not on as many snaps as he has been taking, but you're going to have to find a way to get Malik Mustafa out onto that football field. And I think that the most common safety pairing that you'll see, at least early on, as they give Marquise Siegel some more developmental runway, is Pinnock and Malik Mustafa. But exciting times for the 49ers defense, because You're getting players back. You're on the mend, right? Offensively, they're going to have a healthier, more robust group than they did against the Rams. Defensively, they're going to have a healthier and more robust group than they did against the Rams. Because you look at just Givens and Mustafa are big returns at this juncture for the 49ers, given what they're missing, right? So I want to show you, too, the cornerback room for the 49ers because, we saw safety, right? Safety had some red there in the rating column. Look how the cornerbacks are playing for San Francisco. And you see the yards per cover snap. Upton Stout has given up the most out of the corners, but still for corners, those guys typically give up more yards per cover snap than safety since they're in direct coverage more often. But Stout is still at a spot where the rating that he's given up is below average for quarterbacks. So he's in the blue. Lenore is one of the lowest yards per cover snap allowed in the entire league. He's number 2 or number 3. If you could be under 1 in terms of yards allowed per cover snap, that's really good, especially as an outside corner. Renardo, 0.94. Upton dealing with an ankle injury. I think his number here in rating would be so good if officials had not nullified that interception, which I think was a clean play from Upton Stout against Jacksonville. So you have to take that into account. But even with that not tallied for Upton Stout, he's still, I think, is playing solid football for the 49ers. It hasn't been perfect. It is part of the rookie growing pains. I get it. But it is what it is for San Francisco. Upton is doing what he can, and I think he's going to be better as this season progresses. Darrell Luter Jr. and Chase Lucas have both been really good in their fill-in opportunities. So you ask, how can the 49ers have this, like good corner play, right? Yet be in a position where, as an entire defense, the rank looks like this, number 22 against the pass. They're better against the run than the pass, even though the corners seem to be scoring really well across the board. Well, it's in large part because of how defenses or offenses have been picking on Marquise Siegel, how they've been picking on really one spot. Siegel and Upton Stout have allowed the most pass yardage in the 49ers secondary. But 2, I think the obvious writing on the wall is that the pass rush has not been good. It goes back to the 49ers defensive line, where you see the most red in all of this analysis. So that's where the 49ers are going to be trying to make a move. This is where they hope that Kevin Givens offers the boost of a minor trade when he should return this week. This is where you're going to watch the market over the course of October ahead of that November 4th deadline and see if you could make your team better. Maybe not necessarily through just one move, maybe through a couple moves, a couple smaller transactions. Because, again, a big splash trade, we can talk about Hendrickson, we could talk about Jeffrey Simmons all we want, but big splash trades are hard to come by. For example, the Saints, they've got Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan. Those are also guys with a ton of money against the salary cap for the Saints parked into the future. The Saints only have $8 million in salary cap space right now. If they trade either one of those two guys, the Saints are going to have to make a whole bunch of other moves financially just to fit the dead money that would accelerate and hit their cap right now. You can't just trade Granderson or Jordan as the New Orleans Saints without any other moves and be legal within the salary cap. So there's that constraint on the other end for teams, right? Typically, when a guy has signed a major deal very recently, it's really, really hard to trade for him for that reason, because there's a lot of prorated money that would accelerate the hit now. You're kind of stiff-arming it into the future, but you have to handle it now, so you can't trade that guy away, which is why long-term deals almost always commit a player to that team for at least a couple seasons. So that's when you're narrowing down the list of potential trade partners for the 49ers, I think that's one of the most important facts to remember. Bucs players not seen participating in practice on Thursday. Bucky Irving, the running back, with a foot and a shoulder injury. Mike Evans with a hamstring, and Chris Godwin with the fibula. That's what he broke last year. So I think that Chris Godwin is just taking it easy in practice. I would expect to see Godwin out there on Sunday. I'd also expect to see Emeka Egbuka out there on Sunday. He's not hurt, by the way. Egbuka, the rookie receiver. What a great player. Just tore up the Seattle Seahawks defense, and the 49ers we'll have to develop a good coverage plan for Emeka Egbuka. This is going to be a tough game for San Francisco. I've got a question for you guys. Should I pick the 49ers to win or should I pick them to lose? Because I know when I picked them to lose this year, it hadn't really gone well. It's gone well for the 49ers, not for my predictions. They're underdogs this week, by the way. And they probably should be underdogs, but they've been defying odds so far this season because they're winning at high leverage spots that you wouldn't typically expect a young team to win at. And it's becoming harder and harder for me to say, okay, yeah, they're underdogs. And on paper, Tampa Bay probably has these advantages here and these advantages there. It's being really hard for me to ignore the fact that the 49ers have been able to neutralize advantages or disadvantages on paper through heroic plays in the moment on the field, like Alfred Collins and the strip sack. Not the strip sack, the punch out for Alfred Collins. There have been strip sacks in weeks 1 and 2 for the 49ers that have sealed games as well. So I'm having a hard time right now. I'm watching a lot of tape, and I think that the Tampa Bay Bucks are really, really good. I think that the 49ers are healing up. I think the 49ers have a couple extra days of rest in this game, playing on last Thursday night. That should be big. I think this one's going to be tight. Now, one thing I will say, and I know that there's a danger in comparing last season's matchup to this one's because the teams are different. Tabor Pepper, Deebo Samuel, Jake Moody are all gone for the 49ers. But I go to last year's game and I look at the fact that, yeah, Jennings had huge catches to win the game for the 49ers. Pearsall had his first touchdown early in that game for San Francisco on that post crosser that ended up near the pylon. But Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, and George Kittle all made massive plays. And out of that trio, we expect only McCaffrey to play. No Purdy, no George Kittle. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield, who's playing the best football of his career on the other side, had I thought, really good game against the 49ers last year, but he was playing without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, without Emeka Egbuka because he won yet in the NFL. So you've basically taken a really close game and you've added Godwin and Egbuka to Tampa Bay, and you've taken away George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and Ricky Pearsall from the 49ers. You probably have a better version of Christian McCaffrey now than returning from injury last year. And then you've got a better defense for the 49ers, right? Because they're younger. But still, like when it comes to superstars and guys at really, really critical positions like quarterback and receiver, and no Nick Bosa anymore, it seems that the Bucks have a decided advantage over what the 49ers had last year. But this is all on paper, right? I'm just telling you what's on paper. The 49ers have defied the projections on paper so far this year, which makes it really, really fascinating entering this game on Sunday. I think Tampa Bay is a 3-point favorite over the 49ers at this point. So we're going to be watching this with very, very keen interest on Sunday. It's going to be about 85 degrees in Tampa. Flying out to Florida on Saturday. Been flying back and forth across country. It's been staying nice and busy for the 49ers. I'm going to answer a couple questions here. And go from there. Egbuka is very good. You saw it against the Seattle Seahawks last week. Rashad White is a really good running back. I don't know if he's as good as Bucky Irving, but they do have a two-headed monster there. Bucky, he had some nice runs against the 49ers last year. Really physical back. Now, the big difference is that San Francisco is now playing top 10 run defense and top 3 short yardage run defense versus last year. That's what they weren't ready for in 2024. Anyway, all the statistical data that I gave you, all those charts and graphs, it's right here. It's up on the San Francisco Standard. This is the most in-depth coverage that you're going to get of the 49ers. I mean, I put all the tables out there for you for free, but you should go check out this article. It's in the description. It is also pinned up at the top of the chat section, or it will be at the comment section after this video is up. This is the must read right now. I also have one on the offense that I wrote. I could show you that one right here. The one on the offense was from Monday. And basically, if you go to the San Francisco Standard, you are going to get the most in-depth coverage of the 49ers there is, and it's all going to be nice and visualized for you. And that's the best way you can support me, is if you go to the Standard and sign up and then subscribe to this channel right here. I give you hours and hours and hours of content, but nobody is giving you as much video content or as quality video content, but those people also aren't doing this. They aren't doing the written content. And I think that supporting both would be very, very appreciated on my end. I'm at every single game. I'm at every single practice. And we're writing pieces like this. But the most recent one here, this Robert Saleh piece on the 49ers defensive renovation, I think that's the biggest one. So go ahead and sign up for it. The link is in the description. The link is going to be pinned up at the top of the comment section right now. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. It's been a big morning show. John Lynch tells us that Ricky Pearsall is fighting to be out there, but probably won't be. Jauan Jennings will be back out at practice today. Thumbs up there. Mac Jones is okay. That's important for the 49ers, even though he's dealing with a bunch of stuff. They are slow playing Brock Purdy, the long game. That makes a whole lot of sense for the 49ers. And John Lynch has had good conversations about a potential trade to help out this guy on the 49ers defense. We'll talk to you soon.